In the year 1800, New York City had 60,000 people, no running water, no police force, and actual pigs cleaning the garbage off its dirt streets. 100 years later, that same city had 3.5 million people, electric lights, subways under construction, and buildings scraping the sky. No city in human history had ever grown that fast. And here's the strange part. Almost nobody planned it. So how did a muddy port town at the tip of an island become the richest city on Earth in a single century? The answer comes down to 5 decisions, some brilliant, some ruthless, one of them almost accidental. And the first one was a ditch. In 1811, New York made one of the most arrogant bets in urban history. The city ended around Houston Street. Everything north of it was farms, swamps, and country estates. And yet, city commissioners unrolled a map and drew a grid of streets, 2,000 blocks of them stretching 11 miles north, all the way to 155th Street. People laughed. Why plan streets through empty farmland for a population that didn't exist? But the grid did something quietly powerful. It turned land into a product. Every block was a rectangle. Every rectangle could be split into identical lots. Identical lots could be priced, bought, sold, and mortgaged fast. Land in New York became as easy to trade as flour or cotton. Real estate speculation exploded. Families like the Astors made fortunes doing almost nothing. John Jacob Astor's strategy was simply buy land ahead of the grid, wait for the city to arrive, sell. When he died in 1848, he was the richest man in America, and he reportedly said his one regret was not buying even more of Manhattan. The grid was decision number 1. Decision number 2 didn't happen in New York at all. It happened 300 miles away, and it made every other American city obsolete overnight. In 1817, Governor DeWitt Clinton convinced New York State to dig a canal from the Hudson River to Lake Erie, 363 miles long, dug mostly by hand through forest and rock. Critics called it Clinton's Ditch, a taxpayer-funded fantasy. 8 years later, the Erie Canal opened, and the economics of America flipped. Before the canal, shipping a ton of flour from Buffalo to New York City cost about $100 and took 3 weeks. After the canal, around $10 in about a week, a 90% price cut. Suddenly, everything grown or mined in the American interior, wheat, timber, ore, had one logical exit to the ocean, New York Harbor. And everything imported from Europe had one logical entrance. Philadelphia and Boston had been genuine rivals. After 1825, it wasn't close. By mid-century, New York handled more trade than every other major American port combined. And money followed cargo. Merchants needed insurance, credit, and currency exchange. Banks clustered on a short street at the bottom of Manhattan, named after an old Dutch defensive wall, Wall Street. The canal didn't just move flour, it decided where American capitalism would live. But cargo and capital were only 2 ingredients. The third ingredient was people. And they were about to arrive in numbers no city had ever absorbed. Between 1820 and 1860, over 2/3 of all immigrants entering the United States came through New York. Irish families escaping famine, Germans escaping failed revolutions. Later in the century, Italians and Eastern European Jews escaping poverty and persecution. The population numbers are hard to believe. 1800, 60,000. 1850, over 500,000. 1900, nearly 3.5 million. The city was doubling roughly every 15 to 20 years for 100 years straight. This flood of people was brutal to live through. Neighborhoods like 5 Points became some of the most overcrowded places on the planet, with entire families in single windowless rooms and cholera sweeping through every few years. But economically, it changed everything. Every ship brought workers for the docks, the factories, and the construction sites, and customers for the shops, the landlords, and the newspapers. Labor was so abundant and so cheap that New York could build almost anything, almost instantly. It also created a new kind of business, the business of the city itself. Water systems, gas lines, streetcars, tenements. Whoever controlled those made fortunes. And that brings us to the darker chapter of this story. Because in the mid-1800s, the most profitable business in New York wasn't shipping or banking. It was corruption. Here's a number that should stop you cold. In the 1860s, New York started building a county courthouse budgeted at $250,000. By the time the bill stopped, it had cost around $13 million more than the United States paid for the entire territory of Alaska, bought around the same time for $7.2 million. Where did the money go? One carpenter billed the city roughly $360,000 for 1 month of work. A furniture contractor charged nearly $180,000 for 3 tables and 40 chairs. The invoices flowed through William Boss Tweed and his Tammany Hall political machine, which controlled city contracts, city jobs, and through favors and fear city votes. Modern estimates say the Tweed ring stole somewhere between $45 million and $200 million from New York taxpayers. In today's money, billions. And yet here's the uncomfortable truth: the machine also worked. Tammany found jobs, housing, and food for immigrants the official government ignored, trading survival for loyalty at the ballot box. It was corruption and social services fused into one system. Tweed died in prison in 1878, brought down by journalists and one cartoonist he couldn't bribe. His downfall marked a turning point. New York's chaos was starting to get organized. And organization, plus one new invention, was about to push the city in a direction no one expected. Straight up. For all of human history, buildings had a hard limit, about 5 or 6 floors. Not because we couldn't build higher, because nobody would climb higher. The top floors of any building were the cheapest, rented to whoever could tolerate the stairs. Then, in 1854, at a New York exhibition, an inventor named Elisha Otis stood on a hoisting platform, ordered the rope cut, and thanks to his automatic safety brake, didn't fall. The safety elevator flipped real estate upside down. Suddenly, the top floor wasn't the worst floor. It was the penthouse. Combine that with 2 more breakthroughs: steel frame construction, which let walls hang from a metal skeleton instead of holding the building's weight, and electric lighting after 1882, when Edison's Pearl Street station lit lower Manhattan and the skyscraper became inevitable. Remember the 1811 grid? It now paid off in a way its designers never imagined. Manhattan is an island. The grid had already divided it into fixed, identical lots, and when land is scarce and lots can't grow outward, value has nowhere to go but up. By the 1890s, buildings like the World Building and the Park Row Building were passing 20, then 30 stories. And in 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge, the longest suspension bridge on Earth at the time, stitched 2 huge cities together. In 1898, they made it official. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island merged into one 5-borough metropolis of 3.5 million people, second in the world only to London and closing fast. Step back and look at the pattern, because it's not really a story about buildings. The grid turned land into a tradable product. The canal turned geography into a monopoly. Immigration turned desperation into labor and demand. Even the corruption, in its twisted way, kept the machine running while institutions caught up, and the elevator, steel, and electricity turned a crowded island's greatest weakness, no more room, into its defining feature. None of these 5 forces was planned as part of the others, but each one multiplied the rest. That's the real lesson of New York's 19th century. Cities, like businesses, compound. Early advantages stack, attract talent and capital, and become almost impossible for rivals to overcome. By January 1st, 1900, the muddy port town with roaming pigs was gone. In its place stood the financial capital of the coming American century, built in the space of a single human lifetime. So here's a question worth arguing about in the comments. Which of the 5 mattered most? The grid, the canal, the immigrants, the machine, or the elevator? Pick one and defend it. If you enjoyed this journey through time, hit subscribe. Next, we're covering how one railroad man, Cornelius Vanderbilt, went from a Staten Island ferry boy to the richest self-made man in America, and nearly crashed the entire stock market doing it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.